Hello, good evening. So I just really wanted to read more of this alchemy book. So here I am. And let's see how far we get. So this book is called Real Alchemy, a primer of practical alchemy by Robert Allen Bartlett. And we are getting into chapter 3, astrology and alchemy. Dude, I'm pumped. Okay. Boop. As above, so below. Astrology is intimately connected with the Hermetic philosophy and supplies much of the guidance for practical applications of the alchemist's art. The forces of nature have their reflection at all levels of reality: the salt, sulfur, and mercury. Man is a microcosm, inseparable from his macrocosm environment. The sun has always been considered the source of all life and light in our system. The sun radiates out. The planets absorb what they need, then radiate the excess. This forms the complex interplay of subtle energies that reach our planet and form the basis for astrological studies. The stars also exert their energies and enter into this constant interplay. Advances in radio astronomy have shown that we are constantly receiving energy fingerprints from many stars as well as the planets. In practice, all things are considered to be the product of their natural cycles. For example, medicinal plants are harvested at the correct time in relation to the plant part required. When the plant is operated on in the laboratory, each stage should be done at an optimal astrological configuration harmonious to that operation. It has been said that without knowledge of astrological tools and methods, the production of a true alchemical medicine is not possible. Each illness appears like a vibratory disharmony or dissonance in our particular waveform or field. Using a system of correspondences, alchemical medicine seeks to restore the harmony of our true selves. From ancient traditions to modern scientific studies, we know that medicinal herbs have psychological effects on specific organ systems. Herbs, like the organs they affect, are considered to fall under the influence of a particular planet or sign of the zodiac on the basis of an affinity. Each planetary sphere has a unique energetic expression and signature qualities associated with it, such as color, musical tones, parts of the body, diseases, medical effects, herbs, stones, and metals. For example, the planet Venus is said to be the ruler, in quotes, of copper metal, and the herb yarrow, as well as affecting the kidneys in man. This rulership is a two-way interaction called symphony. Oh, no, it's called sympathy. Hey, cool gamer. Hey, that way. Welcome in. This rulership is a two-way interaction called sympathy and refers to the planetary energies as they affect our world and things of this world manifesting the different qualities of these planetary energies. Today we might describe this sympathy as resonance. Each thing below then has a characteristic waveform resonating with planetary energies from above in specific ways. Within man's occult anatomy, these planetary representatives were often referred to as our interior stars. In practical alchemy, the timing of astrological events is used to assist various aspects of the work on the three levels: salt, sulfur, and mercury. In the work with plants, the moon's disposition is a very important consideration. The waxing moon is good for enriching an essential element by circulations or distillations. This magnetic influence draws things up, volatilizing, exalting, and spiritualizing them. Volatilizing them. Volatilizing, volatilizing, exalting, and spiritualizing them. The waning moon is good for separating the pure from the impure, whether by distillation, extraction, or calcinations, etc. Just as the drying moonlight Our matter is subjected to the fermentation and putrefaction of death in order to release its essence, thus separating the pure and the impure. Astrology helps to harness subtle forces which have an influence on our subject matter. That there are physical forces at play has been demonstrated through studies such as crystallization experiments and capillary dynamics, but there is also a subtle, spiritual aspect we seek to capture as well. Our material subject is the magnet which gathers the energy and holds it. The importance of the birth chart. Our personal natal horoscope provides us with a powerful tool for understanding our own energy signature, and how it is affected by other energy forms, including matter. A detailed examination of the birth chart takes time, but reveals one's essence. The first concepts to examine in order to use this system are the individual planets and zodiacal signs, their energies and rulerships. By developing an understanding of these sympathies and their interactions with each other, we can work to rectify the energetic imbalances that can lead to illness, and also work to strengthen specific energies within ourselves for physical or spiritual improvement. Each individual at birth is considered to be of a particular zodiac type, in that their energetic imprint predisposes them to a particular temperament and also a predisposition to an organ weakness, which is peculiar to that sign of the zodiac. There are a few approaches to working with planetary energies for healing. The most simple is to use the individual planetary energies to support organs, systems, or functions of the body, or use them to oppose disorders, all according to planetary rulership. Another technique for using the planetary system of healing involves a more in-depth study of the birth chart and of the whole self, rather than just the treatment of passing symptoms and illnesses. It offers much deeper and longer-lasting balance and wellness. In this approach, the birth information of the individual is examined, and planetary affinities are determined. The concept behind this is that at the time of birth, the planetary energies are locked up in physical matter and have a determining reflection, stamping their influences and energies at each level of being. The rulership of the various houses in the birth chart reveals all types of personal qualities, such as strengths, weaknesses, disease and health tendencies, and affinities for certain methods of treatment. The planetary energies can also be deliberately introduced in order to produce certain effects in the body, mind, or spiritual level of a person. Each planetary influence can be experienced and worked with in turn to create physical and spiritual balance. In alchemical works, the pattern of life, death, rebirth is often repeated upon the subject in various forms. For example, during distillation, our liquid passes into an invisible state, then condenses and manifests in an improved form. The alchemists viewed this as analogous to death, a visit to the spiritual world, then rebirth in the physical. Similarly, during recrystallization, our matter is dissolved into a medium and becomes clear, then made to reappear as an improved form. In astrology, the birth chart shows the imprint of the cosmos on the individual at birth. So too, during those periods of rebirth of our matter, there is the imprint of the heavens. By repeatedly reinforcing a particular planetary power during these multiple rebirths, our subject becomes polarized to that force. Boom. Oh, excuse me. Okay. Chapter 4. Introduction to Laboratory Alchemy. Quote, "It is therefore necessary that theory is accompanied by practice, the one being the consequence of the other. Only laboratory practice gives mastership. For what is practice if not controlled by theory? The rigor of the former corrects the vagaries of the latter. Vagaries? Vagaries. The discipline must exert himself to realize all his concepts, end quote. Megaphon's commentary on Midas Liber, Mutus Liber, Mutus, and then Liber. The rigor of the former corrects the vagaries of the latter. Let's look it up. Hey, Dr. E, welcome in, man. Happy Sunday. Vagaries. An unexpected and inexplicable change in a situation or in someone's behavior. Okay.
Vagary.
Vagary. Okay, vagaries.
Vagary.
Quirk, idiosyncrasy, peculiarity, oddity, eccentricity, unpredictability, vagary,
Vagary.
balls, vagary,
Vagary.
vagary. Okay. Woo! The rigor of the former corrects the vagaries of the latter. The discipline must exert himself. Balls. The disciple must exert himself to realize all his concepts, end quote. Megaphon's commentary on Mutus Liber. In practical alchemy, there is only the one thing, and all that we perceive is an adaptation of that one. The one takes on the clothing of the four elements to bring forth the three essentials of sulfur, mercury, and salt. It is the work of the alchemist to separate, purify, and recombine these basic principles until they are in perfect proportion and harmony with each other. Alchemy is all about bringing things to the greater state of perfection. Quote, everything which is generated of its elements is divided into three, namely into salt, sulfur, and mercury. Learn the form which is peculiar to these three. One is liquor, and this is the form of mercury. One is oiliness, which is the form of sulfur. One is alkali, and this is from salt. Paraclesis. Oh, that was the end of the quote. No, I didn't. I have to get his works. Okay. I keep thinking that I did, but I didn't. I got Plotinus, which I haven't read. Okay. Spagyrics. Hey, should we look that up to make sure I'm pronouncing it correctly? I feel like we should. Spagyrics. Okay, now. Pronunciation.
Spagyric.
Spagyric. Okay, great. Awesome. Spagyrics. The three philosophical essentials are mirrored even to the physical level and manifested through particular forms which are harmonious to their nature. The practical alchemist seeks to physically separate these three essentials from a substance, purify them, and recombine them, a process termed spagyrics by Paraclesis. The word spagyric, pronounced spagyric, is derived from the Greek words meaning to separate and reunite. The general process used in spagyrics consists of three main steps. 1. Separation of the three essentials. 2. Purification. And 3. Cohobation or recombining. Cohobation. 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 Cool. Learning to spagyrically prepare herbs is a typical starting point for laboratory alchemy. It provides experiences which develop skills and understanding of the art and science involved, and can provide you with some very powerful remedies along the way. These first experiments with plants led the way to the lesser circulation, or plant store, which is very similar to the greater circulation, which produces the philosopher's stone. Before we talk about the easy method, I want to describe the process in another more detailed fashion because I think it more clearly illustrates the separation of the three essentials. Let us say that we have selected the sun-ruled herb rosemary to work upon. I was talking about rosemary today. With an eye to the sun and moon's disposition, we gather some fresh rosemary, chop it finely, and place it into a flask with a little water to make paste. We let it stand a while to loosen up. Then steam is injected into the herb paste, and the hot vapors arising are captured in a cooling condenser. This distillate contains water from the steam, and floating on the water will form a layer of oil, the essential oil of rosemary. This oil we collect. It is the first of the three essentials and represents what the alchemists called the alchemical sulfur of the plant. The oil is a mineral analog or vehicle for the subtle principle of sulfur, the soul or character of the plant. Our rosemary remains in the flask as a watery mush, and we allow this to ferment. In fermentation, the plant dies and gives up the ghost. That is to say, the life force departs into the watery medium. After fermentation, we can distill from this mush a volatile liquid, which the ancients called the alchemical mercury. This volatile liquid, which is mainly alcohol, carries the spirit of the plant, the life force. Today we still buy spirits at the liquor store, and this is where the term comes from. Remember, these physical materials are a reflection of the spiritual forces of nature. The alcohol contains the life force as its body in this realm. The alcohol is not the spirit, but merely a vehicle of spirit in the plant world, a focal point. We now have separation of the three essentials, the oil or sulfur, the mercury as alcohol, and the salt, which still lies hidden in the extracted rosemary residue. The next step of the process is the purification of our separated essentials. The mercury and sulfur are redistilled a number of times until they are highly refined in the physical sense, but also exalted in the spiritual sense. To obtain the salt, the extracted plant material is dried and then incinerated to an ash. This purges the accumulated impurities and structural components, which protected the plant in its growing environment. They have served their purpose, but are no longer necessary. They light gray to white ash. Oh, yeah. No. The light gray to white ash we obtain is dissolved in water, filtered, and the liquid is then evaporated, leaving a purified white crystalline salt. This represents the alchemical salt, the true body of the plant. With the separation and purification of our three essentials complete, we move on to the final step of the spagyric process, that of cohobation. In a sort of resurrection, the finely powdered salt is saturated with its sulfur and awakened into activity by addition of its life force, the mercury. After a period of digestion, our elixir is complete. The alchemists considered such preparations to be exalted and evolved living medicines able to express the plant's true healing potentials, not only on the body, but at the level of the soul and spirit as well. Quote, when now the spiritus and corpus come together and are united after their preparation, one can do wonderful things with them, since they have then 100 times more power than they had previously. For after the conjunctio of the souls and body, there exists a glorified corpus and a great elixir. With it, one performs miracles. End quote. Isaac Holland, circa 1480. Bam. to see. The easy method. Okay, now for the easy method. Everyone can do this, and you probably have most of the materials at home. The mercury within the kingdom is universal, and that was all in bold print. The life force that animates me is the same as that within each of you. The spirit we distill from one plant is largely the same as we would obtain from distilling any other fermented plant. That being the case, we can easily obtain our first essential from the local liquor store. They sell spirits. Ideally, we would buy Everclear, which is 95% alcohol, but this depends on which state you live in. 100 proof vodka is usually available. This is 50% alcohol, and it is satisfactory medium for this beginning operation. But we can use any strong alcohol for this first operation, provided that only potable alcohol is used. Do not use denatured alcohol or methanol. The mercury of each kingdom has an affinity for the sulfur of that kingdom. So to begin, take a plant you wish to work with and grind it to a fine powder. Place the powder into a jar. A canning jar works well. Then pour your alcohol over the powder to cover it by 1 or 2 finger widths. Place a piece of plastic wrap over the top and screw the lid on tightly. And then in parentheses it says, the plastic wrap prevents contact with the metal top. Ooh, itchy itch. Place the sealed jar into a warm place out of direct light. The top of a water heater is a good spot. Let this stand for about 2 weeks and remember to shake it well every day. After the 2 weeks are up, you will see that the alcohol has become deeply colored. We want to collect this extract, and a good way to do it is to pour the entire contents into an old nylon stocking placed into a second jar. Wearing rubber gloves, squeeze the nylon to obtain as much of the liquid as possible. Then seal the jar and let it stand. This liquid extract contains the combined mercury and sulfur of the plant. Take the extracted plant residue and place it into a fire-resistant dish outside. Touch a match to the herb and let it burn down to the ash. Grind the ash very finely and return it to the dish. Then place it over a gas burner or in the oven under broil to make it as light gray or white as possible. This ash contains the salt principle of the plant. Quickly grind the ash while still warm, then add it to the extract of the plant you collected earlier. Again, seal the jar and let it stand in a warm place for at least a week. Shake the jar daily very well. At the end of the week, filter the liquid through a coffee filter and let it stand in a clean glass container for about 48 hours to see if any more insolubles settle out. Decant the clarified extract into dropper bottles for use. This is now a simple spirogeric elixir containing the 3 elements, the 3 essentials of the plant in an exalted form and able to express the plant's truest and most powerful healing potentials on the various levels of our constitution. Remember that in each of these operations, if we can work with conscious intent and create a sacred space to work from, the more effective the end result will be. We also want to keep within astrological timings favorable to the plant as much as we are able. If one is skilled in astrology, one can elect a powerful time to work the various operations. Perhaps the easiest thing to do here in these beginning experiments is to take note of the waxing, waning moon, as we mentioned earlier, and also work on the day whose plant rules the herb we operate on, preferably within the hour following sunrise. Creating the 7 basics. Our suggestion here is that you create what are known as the 7 basics. By utilizing the spagyric methods just described, one can create 7 elixirs, one for each day of the week. Your sun herb elixir is taken on Sunday, a moon herb elixir on Monday, and so on. A few drops in a small amount of water or wine is a good way to start. This will begin to greatly harmonize each system of the body and start the process of rebalancing and transforming at all levels. See the appendix for your information on herbs and their ruling planets. You really are what you eat. By using these 7 basics over time, their refined and spiritualized matter become part of you, and in turn you become more refined and spiritualized. It is said that the attitude of the artist, more than the process itself, is what makes alchemy the divine art. This attitude and energy becomes transferred to the matter being acted upon and affects the outcome of the operation. The energy is released again within us from the elixir in a more noble state. You are the lead which is transmuted into pure gold. As with any new skill, we start with simple things and progress to more complex operations as our skill and experience lead us. We have to make a start somewhere, and these simple procedures form the beginning of a fascinating process of self-transformation. Boom, man. Oh my gosh. I like that a lot. Oh my gosh. Dang. Chapter 5, Alchemical Processes. I want to mention something about spirogerics versus alchemy versus chemistry. In chemistry, we take certain ingredients and combine them through a process to obtain a certain result. And it is always the same result, whether I mix it or you mix it. In alchemy, this is not always the case. There is a subtle something which can influence the end result. The chemist works with materials which are compounded and purified by processes which the alchemist would call unphilosophical, and the materials so produced are dead bodies only. So, what is philosophical? To have your materials be philosophically produced means you must follow the philosophy of alchemy and realize that you are working with the life force and consciousness of your materials as well as the body. Again, the quality of our attention affects the quality of life in our subject, just as with a houseplant or pet. The processes used in laboratory alchemy strive to capture and preserve the operation of subtle essences in a suitable vehicle all the way to their material analogues. Between 1600 and 1700, there occurred a transition period between alchemy and the new science of chemistry. It is during this time period that we can find some of the most clearly written descriptions of processes used in alchemy. Apothecaries of the time were acquainted with the processes and used them to compound certain medicines. This branch of the pharmacy at that time came to be known as spagyrics and related mostly to the preparation of plants. Spagyric preparations became widely popular, but due largely to the long processing times and labor, they slowly faded into obscurity and the hands of faster, cheaper substitutes born of a developing chemical industry. Some writers say spagyrics is the work on plants and alchemy is the work on metals. Wait, I didn't understand. Some writers say spagyrics is the work on plants and alchemy is the work on metals. In truth, alchemy is a universal process working at all levels, whereas the spagyric process is fundamental to both. Alchemy, in addition, seeks to promote the matter's evolution. In a practical sense, spagyrics leads to powerful medicines for the body. Anyone who follows the methods can produce spagyric medicines. There is no strong dependence on the operator's state of mind. Alchemy, oh wait, yeah, that's what it says. There is no strong dependence on the operator's state of mind. Alchemy aims to produce medicines for the soul and spirit levels of being, as well as the body. And the operator is strongly linked to the material operated upon. The proper state of mind is essential for success. For example, once you have purified your essentials to a certain degree, they become very susceptible to mental impressions by those they become very susceptible to mental impressions by those around them, good or bad. This is another reason for the secrecy surrounding alchemical works. Very often, only the artist is allowed to see or handle materials at certain points. These processes and materials can lead to deep insight or contact with alternate realms of consciousness, thus bringing direct knowledge to the alchemist. This is a type of knowing that cannot be written because words are too limiting. It is the marriage of intellect and intuition, or the sun and the moon, as the alchemists would say. Ooh, I'm starting to sweat. Alchemy is more than just something you do in a laboratory. It is a spiritual path leading one to enlightenment, to evolving. It can be thought of as a psychophysiological transformation directed by human self-consciousness. The great work, or magnum opus of alchemy, leads to the spiritual and physical regeneration of the alchemist himself. The philosophers agree that the process consists of stages which are repeated over and over again on the matter until perfection is obtained. These stages, or operations, represent the active principles at work in nature, whether we are speaking of the work on plants, metals, or on our own body and psyche. The alchemical work is not just a spring cleaning or detox session from which we fall back into the same routine. Instead, it is a true and lasting purification. That portion of the great work, which has to do with the transmutation of the alchemist himself, is a process whereby the vibratory activity of our interior stars is so modified that the lower rates of vibration are transmuted and sublimated or lifted up. I wonder if you guys can hear the fireworks outside. I wonder if that was the finale. Oh, nope. Whew. This transformation of the subtle force working through the interior stars has a triple consequence. It leads to spiritual illumination. It presents the alchemist with radiant health due to the perfect combination and coordination of chemical and electrical energies, which maintain the form and functioning of the human body. And finally, this process opens the activity of powers which are normally dormant in most human beings. Pericles said, quote, "You will transmute nothing if you have not first transmuted yourself," end quote. Whew. Man himself is the primary subject of the Hermetic art. It is useless to try to make the philosopher's stone outside oneself before one has approached the first part of the operation, which slowly transforms the operator himself into the living stone. Only then will the alchemist possess the necessary skill and understanding of subtle forces to complete the work of making an actual substance with the power to transmute other bodies. The study of astrology and practical Kabbalah provide us with tools for establishing relationships between seemingly unrelated concepts and materials, as well as a technology for the rising of spiritual energy, or raising of spiritual energy, the secret fire in man. These are essential parts of the alchemist's discipline, trying to separate out the physical actions of the alchemist in the laboratory from these interior connections, bridging the spiritual and physical realms, reduces it to common chemistry. Ora et labora. The alchemical dictum, ora et labora, which means pray and work, was the ancient guideline for practice. Our word laboratory comes from it. A lab is a temple, and oratory wherein we labor. The laboratory work provides us with some powerful tools for accomplishing this great work. The creation of our tinctures and elixirs is a first step in correcting the imbalances in our own sulfur, mercury, and salt. But there are many improvements that can be made to augment their power and effectiveness. Some are simple, others require much more time and effort. Each process teaches and provides insight to nature's operations. Before we can approach this subject, however, we need to understand something of the methodology of laboratory alchemy. Many people have the impression that to even begin alchemical work, one must have all manner of expensive chemical apparatus at one's disposal. Not true. You can begin your own alchemical laboratory with common household items, just as we did in preparing the 7 basics. As one continues the work, one finds that the materials one needs have a way of showing up when they are needed. In the laboratory, fire is our main tool for transformation. Alchemy has been called the work of Vulcan, a blacksmith of the gods, and the old masters called themselves fire philosophers. The sages agree that control of the fire is the key to success in alchemical works. Vulcan, volcano. Right before I started this, I just watched this video of someone doing this beautiful cursive handwriting, and they drew a word starting with each letter of the alphabet, and they went through the alphabet, and they used the word volcano, and I thought that they were writing Vulcan down. Anyways, not very long ago, there were no thermostatic controls like we have today, and not much further back, there were no thermometers. Yet the alchemists were able to perform delicate distillations as well as prolonged searing heats of materials using coal and charcoal furnaces. Anyone who has ever stoked a wood stove or campfire, or even a barbecue, must appreciate the dedication and diligence required to keep a crucible at red heat for a month or even longer using a coal furnace. I mean, bam, dude, seriously. The 4 degrees of fire. Decays, welcome in. Awesome, dude. Happy Sunday. There are many grades of fire mentioned in alchemical texts. Some are physical, some are subtle representatives of spiritual principles. Most often mentioned are celestial fire, central fire, secret fire, and elemental or common fire. We will be developing a deeper understanding of these various fires as we go. For now, let us examine the lowest grade of fire, that which we are most familiar with, common fire. At the practical level, the ancients used common fire in a system of graded heats often called the 4 degrees of fire. The first degree of fire is the Balneum Marie, or Bath of Mary. Some believe this was developed by a female Jewish adept named Mary, the prophetess, around 500 CE. Others say it is not derived from a woman's name, but from the word mare, and it refers to the ocean, like marine. Oh, okay. This is basically a double boiler. The container of matter to be heated is immersed in another container of water, which is heated by the furnace. In this way, the subject matter can never get hotter than 100 degrees Celsius, and thus cannot scorch the delicate components. Alcohol is rectified in a water bath, as an example. The second degree of fire is Balneum Cineris, or ash bath. This is where matter is placed in the ash pit and heated still hotter. The ashes have a certain insulating quality that allows for a heat which is above that of boiling water, but still evenly distributed around the vessel. The third degree of heat is called the balneum arena, or sand bath. It is set up like the water bath, but it is able to maintain a higher heat than the water or ashes. Many oils and substances with boiling points higher than water can be heated and distilled with the sand bath. It provides an even heating of the matter and avoids hot spots from developing. In fairly high heats, the sand bath also lends support for the vessel, which might otherwise become deformed from the heat. The fourth degree is balneum ignis, or bathed in flame. This is the hottest you can make it in your furnace with the naked flame. This heat is used for calcinations, fusions, etc. We have a great advantage today with our electric hot plates or gas heating that can be regulated easily for long periods. In general, start off with the lowest temperature possible to accomplish the operation and try to avoid hot spots from uneven heating. One can always increase the heat as needed. The alchemical operations. Hey, Matthew, welcome in. Awesome. Happy Sunday. We mentioned earlier that the operations of alchemy are representative of nature's operative principles active at all levels of reality. The sages often point out that knowledge of the occult operations of the elements is another essential key to success. In order to understand where and why a particular operation is applied to our matter in the laboratory, we will be examining alchemical concepts of the elements as we go along. Distillation. I want to talk about some of the common operations in laboratory alchemy and hopefully allay some of the fears in their performance. Foremost in this is the process of distillation. You have all done this. Maybe you did not recognize it as such. You put a pot on the stove to simmer, then return to check it. Lift the lid and liquid steams off. This liquid has distilled from contents of the pot. You breathe on a cold glass window and it condenses to liquid drops. This is distillation. The earliest account of distillation described hanging flocks of wool over boiling pots, then wringing the distilled liquid from the wool. Quote, "Now I am come to the arts, and I shall begin from distillation, an invention of later times, a wonderful thing, to be praised beyond the power of man, not that which the vulgar and unskilful man may use, for they do but corrupt and destroy what is good, but that which is done by skilful artists. This admirable art teaches how to make spirits and sublime gross bodies, and how to condense and make spirits become gross bodies, and to draw forth of plants, minerals, stones, and jewels, the strength of them, that are involved and overwhelmed with great bulk, lying hid, as it were, in their chests, and to make them more pure and thin and more noble, as not being content with their common condition, and so lift them up as high as heaven." End quote. John Baptiste de la Porta, 1600. You can go a long way in alchemy by gaining some mastery in the art of distillation. In days past, many households contained a distillery for making medicines, cordials, and cosmetics. There are many types of distillation: simple, fractional, steam, vacuum, solar, etc. In chemistry, we use this process to separate liquids from one another and to purify liquids. In alchemy, we additionally use this process to exalt or evolve our matter, as we mentioned earlier, mirroring the life, death, rebirth cycle between states of matter. A trip to the thrift store and some ingenuity can provide you with a simple distillation setup if you do not have the funds or inclination to purchase chemistry glassware, or if you want to just try your hand at it before investing in glassware. At the very simplest, a jar containing liquid to be distilled can be placed into a larger jar, which is then sealed and placed in a sunny spot. The distillate will form on the walls of the large jar and run down the sides to the bottom where it is collected. It may not be terribly efficient or suitable for all distillations, but it is easily available for anyone to experiment. There are many illustrations in old texts depicting this type of solar distillation. In herbal alchemy, most common uses of distillation are in the preparation of the sulfur and mercury. Earlier, we described the steam distillation of the essential oils from a plant. Live steam is injected into a plant. Water mush and the essential oils are carried over with the steam to form a layer on top of the distilled water. We can also simply distill the plant, water mush, and collect the oil as it forms a layer at the top of the distillate. The collected oil can be mixed with water and distilled again to bring it to a higher state of purity. The distillation of alcohol is perhaps the most frequent operation in herbal alchemy, and this distillation is repeated anywhere from 6 to 12 times in order to make it pure enough. This process is called rectification. However, we cannot produce 100% alcohol by simple distillation, no matter how often you repeat the process. The best we can do is about 95%, unless we use some new tricks. Most often, a drying agent is used, such as potassium carbonate or calcium oxide, quicklime. These materials are not soluble in alcohol, but have a voracious affinity for water, which they absorb from the alcohol. In many instances, the distillations are repeated not so much to increase the purity, but to elevate or spiritualize the matter. Digestion. This is one of the most common operations of practical alchemy and is simply allowing a material to incubate at a constant temperature for some period of time. The time period will vary depending on what is needed to occur, and the temperature may need to be slowly increased over a lengthy course of digestion. But the idea is to provide a heated environment for the matter to react within or to slowly mature like hatching an egg. The whole of the art is a controlled digestion. You can construct a simple chamber for digestion by placing a light bulb inside a large plastic ice chest of a type used for camping. Simply by changing the wattage of the lamp, you can control the temperature to the required degree. A simple indoor-outdoor thermometer is useful for monitoring temperature, for the herbal work ranges from about 90 to 104 degrees Fahrenheit. Many operators prefer to wrap vessels with aluminum foil to protect them from the bright light. Extraction. Extraction refers to methods for separating the pure from the impure. As with all of these basic operations, there are many ways to accomplish the end. In general, extraction methods use an extraction medium to effect separation. When you brew tea, water is the extraction medium. When you made the seven basics, vodka was the extraction medium. Remember that the mercury of a kingdom has an affinity for the sulfur of that kingdom. In herbal extraction, we use alcohol, the vehicle for vegetable mercury, to pull out the sulfur of the plant. The resulting extract is called a tincture, from the Latin tinctura, that which colors. It contains the mercury and sulfur of the plant. The extracted plant residue contains the salt, which we obtain by calcination. There are three methods widely used to effect extraction of a tincture from plants. The first is called maceration. We used this to make the seven basics. Pour the extraction media, also called the solvent or menstruum, over the material to be extracted until it stands about 2 finger widths above the material. Seal tightly and shake well. Place into a warm spot to digest, and remember to shake it daily. After the extraction period, which can be a few hours to over a year in some operations, simply filter the tincture and separate it from the residue. Okay, let me show you this little graph. It's just a little picture chart. Oh, my nails are dirty. Tincture, residue, maceration. And then this one is a condenser. Flask in cold water out. Oh, cold water in, cold water out, condenser. Oh, okay. All right. I'm seeing it. Oh, balls. Here we go. Boop. Okay, so yeah, that's right where I am, this new page. There we go. The second type of extraction allows us to use a greater heat without loss of the volatile components. This method is called a reflux extraction. The matter to be extracted is placed into a flask and covered with the extraction medium. Then a condenser is attached to the top and heat is applied such that condensation occurs no higher than the first 1/3 of the condenser. After several days of this constant heating without liquid loss, the material is allowed to cool, then filtered to obtain the extract and solid residue. This method works well for harder materials such as roots, barks, and woods. The third method of extraction is called Soxhlet extraction, which is Soxhlet. Soxhlet. Ooh. Oh, where's that Soxhlet word? Here. Named after Franz von Soxhlet, a German chemist who invented a special glassware apparatus for extracting fatty substances from materials in 1879. The apparatus has come to be called the Soxhlet extractor and can be somewhat expensive. In this method, the material to be extracted is placed into a filter paper cup, called the thimble, and inserted into the extractor body. The extraction medium is placed into the flask at the bottom, and heat is applied to it. The solvent vapors rise up a side tube into a condenser where it turns a liquid again and drops into the extractor body and thimble. The extractor body fills with solvent until it reaches the top of the siphon tube, whereupon it drains back into the flask. This cycle repeats until extraction is complete and there is no more coloring of solvent in the extractor body. The extract or tincture is recovered from the flask and the extracted residue is recovered from the thimble. Very often, several thimbles are filled and extracted with the same solvent to obtain a concentrated tincture. Fermentation. Fermentation is a very important process in alchemy through which the vital essence of a material is released into a new medium from which we can capture it. In herbal alchemy, it is always preferable to use the plant's own mercury instead of that derived from another source, such as grain alcohol. Although the mercury of a kingdom is the same throughout that kingdom, isolating it in this very purified form is difficult. Each type of alcohol carries with it some of the subtle sulfur of the plant from which it was distilled. In many of the beginning works of herbal alchemy, and for general use, an alcohol derived from wine is perfectly suitable. However, for some of the more advanced works, it will be necessary to obtain the alcohol from the particular plant one is working with. Winemaking is an art unto itself, and more than we can detail here. You can explore this in many places online, so we will only touch on a few guidelines for alchemical work. The idea is to add nothing foreign to the plant, that is, no added yeasts, no sugars, or nutrients other than what the plant itself supplies. The general procedure is to place the fresh or dried plant into a large container that can be sealed. If you are using plant materials that have been steamed to collect the sulfur, the natural yeasts of the plant are going to be the inactive, so you will have to add a handful of the plant that did not get steamed. Cover the plant matter with enough water to make it very liquid. Say 5 to 10 times the volume. say 5 to 10 times the volume of solids, and stir it around very well. Now stopper the vessel tightly, but leave a small piece of tubing running out of the top and into a small container of water. This is called a fermentation lock. Fermentation is anaerobic, that is, it proceeds without air contact. However, there is release of carbon dioxide gas, which can bubble out of the tube without air getting in. Fermentation can take days or weeks to complete, so place the vessel into a warm place at about 30 degrees Celsius and watch for the bubbling to stop. When the bubbling and foaming action has stopped, filter the liquid out and seal it for use. You can proceed immediately to distillation in order to obtain the mercury, or let the wine age for a while first. Remember to save the plant residue for calcination and recovery of the salt, and also save the liquid from which you distilled the mercury. This liquid is evaporated to a thick honey-like consistency, then calcined to obtain the salt of sulfur of the plant. More on this when we talk about calcination. In practice, you may find it necessary to deviate from the ideal and add a small amount of wine yeast and sugar to those plants that seem to refuse to ferment easily. If you find it necessary to add yeast to initiate fermentation, try adding a handful of red grapes, which still have the white, powdery coating of natural yeast on the skins, into a cupful of warm water. Shake it around for a while, then decant the water, which now contains some of the grape yeast, into the plant water mixture you wish to ferment. This will act as a starter to initiate fermentation. Here's another little picture. Sublimation. Okay. Sublimation is a term used to denote the rarefaction of a material, and though it is often applied to liquid or solid materials in alchemy, it most commonly refers to action on a solid body. There are some solids hope I got it. There are some solids you will come upon in alchemy which are purified by sublimation. These materials go from the solid state to a vapor without passing through a liquid state, and the vapor returns to the solid state upon contact with a cool surface. Alchemically, the body opens and the finer parts ascend. These are captured by a cool condensing surface in an exalted form. Most notable are many of the ammonia-based salts. Corningware casseroles work well for this. Place the matter to be sublimated in a layer on the bottom of one casserole, then cover with a second casserole that is inverted. Gently heat the bottom, and the sublimate will collect on the upper surfaces. The final sublimation temperature will depend on the matter you are sublimating and can range from near room temperature to a full red heat. Sublimation is the reason your ice cubes disappear if left for long periods in the freezer, and forms the basis for freeze-drying material. Circulation. Hey, Creatrix, come on in. Welcome. Oh my gosh, awesome-o. Circulation is a process of continuous distillation used in alchemy to evolve your subject matter. In its simplest form, your subject, say one of the 7 basics, is placed into a tall bottle like a long wine bottle and gently heated at the bottom while the top is allowed to remain cool. In this way, the liquid distills upward, hits the cool upper surface and condenses, then falls back into the bulk of the liquid. It is not unusual to let a substance circulate for a month or longer, during which time it passes through many life and death rebirth cycles and is evolved. This is another easy method of enhancing the effectiveness of your elixirs and of stepping from the realm of simple spagyric preparation to truly alchemical preparations. Circulation provokes the evolution of the matter towards a more perfect state. Tall wine bottles filled with only 3 or 4 ounces and set on a warm heating pad will work for this. Calcination. Calcination takes its name from the word calx, CALX, which is an old term meaning lime or quicklime, calcium oxide, which is a white powder. When something is calcined, we apply fire to produce a white ash, usually by burning away the various volatile constituents and revealing the essential material components, the salt. Burning herbs to ash is easy enough over a small propane stove, but there are a few problems. First, there is the smoke and smell, sure to attract the attention of your neighbors and elicit moans and groans from other people of your household. Unless you have a good fume hood, this is definitely an outdoor activity. Secondly, there are some materials which refuse to get very white at all. There is a simple method we can use, called the leaching process, to obtain the salts in a purified form. After extracting your herb with alcohol, the plant residue is filtered out and placed into the heat-resistant dish. Metal dishes are okay, but avoid aluminum. Take it outside and place it on a brick or some other fire-resistant holder. Then touch a match to it. Let the herb burn and stir it around once in a while to burn as much as possible. It should turn black, and if you are lucky, it will calcine? I'm not sure. Will calcine by itself. By itself to gray. A small propane camp stove is perfect for many operations used in alchemy. Once the plant has been reduced to a gray ash, grind it and continue calcining to get it light gray. Prolonged calcining and grinding well eventually give you a very light gray to almost white ash. To speed this up, we can take our gray ash and mix it with 10 to 20 times its volume of water. Shake it or stir it well. You can even heat it up to near boiling. Then filter and collect the liquid. Place the liquid in a bowl and allow it to evaporate under a gentle heat. A white crystalline material will remain. Collect this, grind it fine, and keep it dry. This is called the salt of salt. The material that remains in the filter, which did not dissolve in the water, is called the caput mortuum, or deadhead, also called terra damnata, or damned earth, and is usually discarded. Damned earth. There is another salt we obtain from plants. In working, you will notice that many plants do not give a lot of volatile oil, the alchemical sulfur. They are said to have a fixed sulfur. For these, we can take the fermentation liquor, after removal of the alcohol, our mercury, or an alcohol extract of the plant, evaporate it to a thick honey-like mass, then calcine it. It will turn black, and continued calcination may get it to gray, but generally not. It stays black, so we use a little trick to help. Grind the black material, then wet with distilled water, or better yet, the collected phlegm of the plant, just to saturation. Let it stand overnight, then gently calcine it again. You will notice that it becomes lighter. Repeat this process of wetting and calcining several times, and you will slowly bring it to a very light gray or even to a white. This can now be leached out with water, as you did for the plant ash. Filter and crystallize it. This will give us the salt of sulfur, which is a magnet for the subtle principle of sulfur of the particular plant. In almost all cases, you will find that a long, slow calcination works better than a short, violent one. Solve et coagula. Hi, Zippora. Kalima. Welcome in. Zippora. I like it. Solve et coagula. This is an ancient alchemical formula for exalting our matter. In herbal work, it is applied to the salts we collected, and from the standpoint of chemistry, it is a simple recrystallization where our salts are dissolved into water, filtered, and again evaporated to dryness. From the alchemical viewpoint, we are passing our matter through the life, death, and rebirth cycle. Hey, awesome! Welcome in. Cool beans. I'm so glad to meet you. Welcome. Ooh, here's a tickle in me. In the liquid state, materials are much more susceptible to astrological influences, especially through the moon, and we use this to impress or augment a planetary power in our subject. It is not uncommon to repeat this process of solve et coagula a number of times using distilled water or a specially prepared type of water, which has already captured certain astrological influences during its manufacture. With each cycle, the subject becomes more powerful. An excellent source of this water is the so-called phlegm from distilling and rectifying the alcohol. This phlegm is obtained by containing the distillation, after removal of the alcohol, of our fermentation liquid down to the thickened honey-like residue from which we obtain the salt of sulfur. The water that distills over is called the phlegm, and it is held to be the best solvent for purifying the salts of the body it was derived from, so keep it aside until needed. As fire is the active agent for purification of spiritual energies, neater. Water is the active agent for purification of material energies, salt. Oh, I got a cough once. Angelfish, you cracked me up. Matt, man, welcome in, dude. Hello, Angelfish. Awesome-o. Whew. So, we're learning about the phlegm. As fire is the active agent for purification of spiritual energies, or the niter, water is the active agent for purification of material energies, salt. These are just a few of the common operations of laboratory alchemy, and these in turn are related to the planets or signs of the zodiac under whose influence they are preferentially performed. Remember that there is also the inner alchemy, which affects the operator as well. Each of these operations can become a very powerful, transformative meditation during their performance if we consciously relate ourselves with our subject matter. For example, during the calcinations of our plant material, we burn off the volatile structure components of the plant, which serve to protect it from the environment and ensure its propagation during its life. These components are no longer necessary as it enters a new phase in its life as an evolved alchemical elixir in the service of the alchemist. Similarly, within our psyche, we have accumulated various ephemeral components in the mask of our personality, some good, some bad, which have served their purpose and are no longer required. There are many things we have tucked away deep in our unconscious that we prefer to forget about altogether, and it takes a good deal of our energy to keep them hidden, though they have a habit of popping out from time to time. And this is energy blocked up in a useless waste that is better used elsewhere. We've all been in the hot seat during our lives when these things we try to hide and hope they will go away do come out. Or we have more catastrophic events which rip our lives apart, and we are forced to look deeply within to determine what really is most essential in our lives. This is part of our personal calcination. We can consciously pull these things out, examine them for what they are, learn from them, diffuse the grip they have on us due to erroneous beliefs, and move on. In this way, we purposely calcine out those parts of the psyche which tie up energy. We free this energy for our own personal transformation into our true selves. So it is with each of the alchemical operations. There is a corresponding internal process that leads to our own transformation into an evolving or into an evolved being. Very often it is not easy nor a comfortable thing or a pretty sight. That is why it is called the great work. But in the end, the things that have kept us as heavy as lead become transmuted into incorruptible spiritual gold. The processes of laboratory alchemy have a strange way of working on us at all levels in spite of ourselves. As we work on our matter, it is working on us. The zodiac and alchemical operations. The various stages our matter must pass through on its way to becoming perfected by art will be dependent on the particular subject of the work. Alchemy recognizes 12 of the most common chemical operations, one for each sign of the zodiac. When the moon is in a particular constellation, a corresponding chemical operation is performed. In other words, the subtle energies governing the operation or state of the matter to be operated on are considered to be optimal or at least active. The operations and the zodiac signs are classically listed as follows. So, planet. Let me show this to you. Code! Welcome everyone. 111 it says right now. Badass. Okay, Mars is Aries, fire, cardinal. Yeah, okay, so I'm showing it to you and then I'm going to read it down here. Boop, boop. Okie dokie. So we've got the planet, the sign, the element, the duration, and the operation. So Mars, which is Aries, fire, cardinal, digestion. And we've got a positive sign next to Mars. Venus, negative sign, which is this talking about yin and yang? Yeah, Mars is active, Venus is receptive. Okay, so then Venus is Taurus, earth, fixed, and fixation. Mercury, active, is Gemini, air, mutable, distillation. Moon is both active and receiving. It's Cancer, which we're just now in, right? Cancer season. Cancer, water, cardinal, separation. Sun is both yin and yang. Leo, fire, fixed, calcination. Mercury is yin. Virgo, earth, mutable, congelation. Venus is, well, why is it here now? Venus is active. Interesting. I wonder if this is what this means. Venus active, Libra, air, cardinal, sublimation. Mars, receptive or negative. Scorpio, water, fixed, dissolution. Jupiter, active or positive. Sagittarius, fire, mutable, incineration. Saturn, receptive. Capricorn, earth, cardinal, fermentation. Saturn, again, and this time active, is Aquarius, air, fixed and multiplying. And then Jupiter in the receptive is Pisces, water, mutable, projection. Dang. Oh my God. Oh man, this stuff is just so cool. I'm just so glad that we're doing this. Shoot. Well, dang, you guys. I think I am going to call it. I just read through 3 chapters. Even though I'm so stoked that everyone's here right now. Thank you. Man, I'm so glad we read from each book today. Because, man, there's so many other books that I want to read. And I don't even want to forsake the ones that we're in. They're so good. Not just that, but like, yeah, the practice thereof. So thank you. I love yous. I know you miss it, buddy. But it's there. It's there for the taking if you ever want to take it back in or take it in at all. So thank you. I love yous. And yeah, it's almost tomorrow. So until then, mwah, I will see you so soon. Thank you.